Hi, welcome to North Fulton Serves. We're a podcast where we learn more about individuals trying to make a difference in their community and hopefully encourage others to do the same. Today I have my friend John Goss, a jack of all trades, entrepreneur, and big community advocate. John, thank you.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I don't know if I'm a jack of all trades, but it's nice to be here.
Well, you're the guy I call when I'm like, okay, I need a new way to get something done or need a new angle here, and then so you're typically my first phone call. So that's why you're here today.
Highly flattering to be the first phone call from a city councilman. That's for sure. I'm going to use that in my LinkedIn profile.
The phone a friend option. So, John, tell me a little bit. You've grown up in the area, or how long have you been in Alpharetta?
My wife and I and my daughter, we've been in Alpharetta since 2003, and we moved actually from East Atlanta, where we had lived for 8 years. And then prior to that, I grew up in Georgia since the second grade. I actually grew up in East Cobb.
Okay.
And I'm also a UGA grad. And then I've lived in Buckhead. I've lived in Virginia Highlands, but the longest place we've now lived here is Alpharetta, and we've seen it obviously change quite a bit. But my background, having seen Cobb County and the way that it grew has given me a lot of good view and a kind of a good backdrop into how I would love to see Alpharetta grow. And so that's part of my activism in Alpharetta, is to try to kind of lean on how I do and don't like parts of East Cobb or how I grew up, and take the good things and bring them here and leave the rest over there.
Yeah. And so what are some of the ways that you're active in the community?
So I always, whenever people ask me, the way my brain works, so it's funny that you said you're the guy, I'm the guy you call. My brain is, if I see something that I don't like, I like to try to fix it. And so it ranges from day to day to long-term planning. But some of the things that I like to focus on specifically for Alpharetta is how do we, so there's this overarching kind of guideline that I use, and that is community attachment. And if you think of those as ligaments or the human body, you've got all of these different ways that the body interacts, and there's a balance. And that balance has to be, if you take the community, is you balance the developer community, you balance constituents, you balance visitors. But you also, when we talk about people that live here, is how do they stay connected? Alpharetta's grown, right? So Alpharetta's gone from not 30,000, 20,000 people to over 66 to now somewhere above 70, more maybe even the 80s when the next census comes out. Is how do we create these connective tissues, maintain or create them, so that we feel like the community is still small, even though it's broader.
And as many have said, like, keep the hometown feel.
Absolutely. Yes. Try to keep the hometown feel. So how do I do that? We all know transportation's a big deal, so I try to come up with ideas and present them to people like you or folks in my neighborhood about transportation, unique and different ways to use electric vehicles as an example, or use new technologies. So I thought of it one time, to give you just a random example, is solar panels. So if I can figure out a way to get solar panels at bulk for my neighborhood, why not create a co-op? We stick the solar panels on the roof, and then we sell, all the excess energy, we get credits back. Yeah. Or even windmills, and not to say windmills should be put here, but how can I leverage people, resources, city, whatever, to kind of push new technologies?
So did you actually bring that up to your neighbors?
Yeah, I did.
Solar
they said
panels?
No, they weren't interested. Absolutely. and it's too expensive. So anybody that knows Elon Musk, he makes these really cool solar panels, but they're very, very expensive.
So you work on issues that you're passionate about.
Yep.
You've been part of organizations, Tech Alpharetta through that, your planning commission in Alpharetta. And then I now see you working on the Old Rucker Road garden. You're now a gardener.
Yeah. So along the journey of, I worked in corporate America for a number of years, and then I became an entrepreneur and started my own healthcare business with a very good friend of mine about 6.5 years ago. And along that journey, we've had a lot of highs and lows, but one of the things we've kind of come to is this idea of the story and storytelling in general. and the narrative is extremely important, and that is how people identify with things that they care about, whether they know that or not. And so the example I'll give you is the Old Rucker Garden is a great story. And why I got involved is because it's close to my house, and the story of how it evolved and came to be is beautiful. And for those of you that don't know it, Jason, I'll let you tell it in just a second. But my passion is that I actually had a neighbor, so I'll tell you a quick story. My neighbor that I grew up across the street from in Marietta was the driving force behind a public-private park in East Cobb called Friends of East Cobb Park. And for those of you that don't know it, go Google it. But it's the first public-private park in the United States. And it's a nonprofit, and it is supported solely by citizens. And the reason that Cobb County needed it at the time is they had plenty of ball fields and plenty of places for people to recreate, but they did not have a passive park or parks that allowed children with disabilities, allowed older people to walk trails, and provided just a very nature-like place. So I said, I want to find that in Alpharetta also. We have a great park system. Let's try to figure out new ways to reuse and save some of these lands. Lo and behold, Old Rucker Park comes along. And I said, this is fantastic. This is part of the narrative of preserving farmland space. That is what Alpharetta was a rural community. And then also pairing it with this whole sustainability and agriculture. It's just a fantastic story. So that's kind of how I came to it.
That's one of my favorite ones, the parks, how that came about. So when I first joined council, my big reason for being there was I wanted us to safely get out of our neighborhoods to be able to walk around and find cool places within a 10-minute walk. And so lo and behold, we didn't have that many park spaces throughout the Alpharetta outskirts. And so trying to place them 10 minutes away. And that one fit the bill right away because of what it was. It was actually a family nursery. So they had trees growing around there and everything. And so it just made perfect sense for us to pick it up and try to keep the roots of what it was, and then try to engage the community to make it their own. And so luckily we had the Harry's, what they had was a co-op market, and so a garden there. They had to move it because Amazon took it over. We were going to probably move it to one of our existing parks. And then I thought, well, no, let's see if we can make this a catalyst to get the ball rolling on this. And it's done a great job with Amanda and the staff from Parks and Recreation. It's been great to see. But I'm glad you've been staying on board with it. I'm hoping you can take some of your ideas with it to bring it out to more of the community and just make it grow even faster than it would if it was just left to government to establish and develop.
I think you hit the nail on the head, is that the narrative. So the way that I love storytelling is if it's a book, we're at chapter 1.
Yeah.
And so as I've talked to Amanda and everybody associated with the parks over there, and it is that let's continue to tell this narrative and let's make it as big and as broad as possible. Sustainability and utilization of resources that we have in our communities is huge, and it's huge everywhere. I mean, you look at all of the new cities, Dunwoody, Sandy Springs, Brookhaven, they're all trying to preserve parks. I commend you for the commitment you've made to parks. It's awesome. I mean, it really is. And people probably don't realize that it's a lot harder to find the land and purchase the land and come up with the funds than it seems. And so they focus on what our parks lack, instead of looking forward to the fact that we have dedicated people just looking for new spaces.
And it's a constant balance between both, taking care of what you have and making sure that's done right, but then also expanding, because like you said, we've grown from 30,000 to 65,000 in just 10 to 15 years. Yep. And so I appreciate that. Yeah, and part of that why I told the story of the Friends of East Cobb Park is because there are ways, and that's why I wanted to get involved. There are ways for the community to help sustain some of the what we would traditionally say are park services through taxation, that members can be more tied directly to these parks, and that they can feel that there's a sense of ownership there that's above and beyond just being a resident. You don't even have to live here really to be a member of a park and be a supporter of something. That can be the arts, that can be the park, that can be whatever you're into. And so
I think that's the other piece of this, is that even though communities ask for all of these services, the other side of that coin is they don't maybe necessarily want the taxes that come with that sustainability. So we've got to be creative in how we work within the confines of what that is.
And I think we're a blessed community where we have the resources available that when people are passionate about one park or the arts, that they can put either through helping with their skill set or helping with their funds to help create that. And you're seeing that through Arts Alpharetta, the Equestrian Center, hopefully more as we develop the park system in there. So I completely agree with you, because it shouldn't be on the government, because if we did it, we'd have a nice park, but I think we could make something better that we can call our own, that we have equity stake in.
I totally agree. I think the key theme, and that's another great story that could be told about Alpharetta, is its passion. When you have folks that care about where they live and are willing to do something, it's a very unique thing. And so that our demographic up here lends itself very well to that kind of passionate involvement. What I would say is another area you asked, what am I most interested in when I talk about community interaction and kind of creating these, either recreating or strengthening the ties that make community small, is activism in itself. And so how do you ignite someone's passion that doesn't know that they're passionate? I was not I had a garden. I did not really, I was not fully invested in this ag portion of the garden until I got there and heard the story and heard all the cool things. And so, a lot of what I think we should strive to do, and it's not government, but these podcasts, is to tell that story, is that you may not know what you're passionate about, and that's okay. But there are a lot of places where you can plug in and learn and find something where it really drives you, and it's very interesting. I mean, Alpharetta, we are so lucky to have so many opportunities to plug into places. And so that in and of itself, I encourage anyone to do, is just go try stuff, go try things. That's how I feel like I've evolved as a person, is I'm super interested in pretty much anything, at least at the beginning, because I want to have an open mind about what I can learn. Can it make me a better person? Can I serve someone else? There's these tenets that we try to live by that you could call morals or ethics or whatever they are. But for me, it's I either want to be of service to someone, or I want to learn so that I can try to pass it forward to someone else.
Now, if you don't mind, let's maybe try that and break it down a little bit. Maybe
Sure.
Using the parks as an example. So Friends of the Park system. And what I'm trying to do here on this podcast is maybe having a series of creating a community engagement toolkit. And so part of that would be using technology to build your brand and to have more of a content distribution for your marketing. So let's use this as an example as the Friend of the Park. How would you start? What would a group need to do to get going on that? Website, social media, what would be the steps that anybody should do?
Okay. So there are two main themes right now that we see when we talk about brand. And so there is what we call the personal brand, which is all of your social media, and when I say your, I mean personal people that do all that: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. There are several new ones, and then there is the brand itself that you're trying to create. And so they can either be the same or they can be different. So for your example, Friends of Rucker Park is the brand, right? And so that brand, if you wanted to create a toolkit around that brand, you would have a set of materials that were geared towards the message. And so even now, when we talk about the message has to be clear and it has to do something. And so there has to be a call to action. So in the case of the park has already been purchased. So that's the first four pages of chapter 1. But really what the park needs to do is the park needs to evolve. So in order for it to evolve, we have to tell the story in such a way that at the end of that story, we want to ask something of someone. Do we need money to build a fence? We do.
We do.
Do we need community involvement to continue the work that's being done? We do. Do we need some press so that agriculture as a sustainable model, we can spread that kind of message, maybe sprinkle it across some of these counties? We do, because then that exposes us to the state level. Do we need, what are the things that are most important now versus in the future? So to boil it down, you need a very clear message. You need it to be very concise. You need to have your call to action, which is something that you're asking for. And so but then you need to have some sort of set of goals that are going to take you to whatever end state it is for what I call 30, 60, 90, 30 days, 60, 90 days, your 6-month phase, your year phase, and then your 5-year goals. Every year you're going to relook at your 5-year goals anyways, so it doesn't matter. These are total corporate initiatives. But the toolkit, social media, website presence. If you're going to do website presence and you're going to do social media, you have 2 options. One is invest in a media company that knows what they're doing, which is expensive.
Yeah.
There are lots of them. The challenge with digital media companies, and apologies for those in digital media, but it's very hard to measure. And so it's hard to know what quality you're getting from how much does a website cost to what is my social outreach if I were to do a Facebook ads? What is my goal? Friends of Rucker Park, the goal is to raise money to build a fence. It's a very clear goal. So what we need is we just need a website presence that's very clear with some optimization around stories. So Amanda and Emily, what I told them is I said, we need to take your podcasts, your blog content, and we need to interview members, and we need to take any of your video content. And so what I subscribe to and ascribe to is the Gary V model of content creation, which is you create one long form piece of content that can be video or a podcast like this that's got audio and video, and we cut it. And we cut it in multiple ways, and we push it to the platform. So if you had a website, we would put it on the website. If we had a PowerPoint presentation, we would put it in the presentation. But all of it is centered around the story and the brand, and you never deviate from the clear, concise story and the brand. Whatever that call to action is, you always use it. Whatever that branding is, we want to raise money for a fence. Here's how we do it. You stay with it and you continue with it. Because what people identify with is they want to see the story evolve, but they want to remember where the story started.
That's right. So with all the different platforms that are available now, can you build pretty easy a website on your own using something like Squarespace or is it better to get maybe a graphic designer to take a look at it? Because a lot of these organizations, you want to be able to spend the money building the fence, not spend it to
right.
build the website.
So Old Rucker's a little different because it's there's some government, but let's just take it and say, let's say a private business. Do you want to spend the money to build a web presence? Yes, you do. Are there websites that are more sophisticated than others that allow you to optimize how that web presence is viewed when searched? Yes. And so that's a little bit, if for those that don't know what I'm talking about, that's SEO. So a WordPress site is going to allow you to hold content, but it's also going to allow you to add plugins to the site that allow you to, when Google searches you, a Google engine basically indexes everything on the internet that we know of. We'll stay away from the dark web today.
Thank you.
And if you need a website that drives traffic for you, where you do e-commerce or some other way that website needs a presence, yes. But you have to determine, what is your website for? Most websites today they're either one of two. They're an e-commerce site, I sell t-shirts, or they're a modified front door sales slick. This is who I am. I want you to contact me. That's it. It's not the old websites where it's 17 pages long. I've got to click 4 pages deep to find one piece of content. It is really, this is who we are. This is what we're about. It's very simple. And that's all you need. So
trying to get you to the call of action.
Trying to get you to the call of action, which is sign up, contact me, I'm interested. Because really what websites do is they're a filter. You're either going to stay on it for 1 to 3 milliseconds, or you're going to stay 15 minutes. There is really no in between. And so that's what Google Analytics tells you, is who is the audience? Why are they here? What page is working? All that SEO backend stuff is important. But if you said, I'm a person, I have a brand, I just started a business, I want to build a website, can it be done cheaply, free, and can you find all the content you need to know on the internet? Yes. Yep. Can you optimize it yourself? Maybe not.
So we have the website then created. And then social media. What do we stick with? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram?
Yep. So what we found is that what people do, social media, this is not ads, these are posts. So Twitter posts, Twitter followers, there's two buckets. One is influencer marketing, right? Where you've tagged someone with a lot of followers and you've given them something. Somehow they've retweeted, used something that you've given them. And so that's how you gain followers. The most tried and true method, I hate to say it, is hard work, where you are consistent in whatever you use. So if you use Twitter, tweet every day. If you have a blog post, the blog post has to be a certain number of words. It has to come out a certain number of times, and it has to be good. Mm-hmm. I don't want to read 4 crappy articles. I want to read one good one that's 2,500 words or longer, because that's what the Google engine picks up. But the point is consistency in whatever you do. And that consistency over time is going to gain you points in the algorithm itself, but also will gain you the followers that you seek. Because the point is you want to find people that like your content. What we see in social media today and what we see generally in businesses is that it's the spray and pray method. You shoot the shotgun, you put out a bunch of content, you put out a bunch of things, and then you wait. And you say, well, why do I have 12 followers? Well, because nobody wants to read it. Because it's A, it's not good, and B, they may not be interested in it. So platforms, just pick one, but be consistent.
Well, and going back to what you were saying earlier, so can you make it so you can pick either or of doing a video vlog versus a written blog?
You can.
So is it video now becoming that can just be on its own?
So what we do is you can take a video and an audio, and you can run it through a service, and it can create a blog post for you now. It can transcribe it immediately. So as you create the video and the audio, you are also creating the transcript. Now you can modify that blog post, but all 3 of those come out all at the same time. And that's what we do today. The reason we do it is curated blog posting is the hardest posting to get right if you are trying to put out content that is solely yours. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to do a bunch of research, put it all together, post it as your own, say who the authors are, and then say, hey, I've come up with this cool article. But that still takes 2 or 3 months. A 2,500 word blog post is a lot. So instead of doing that, whatever content we're creating now, right, let's make it a transcription, a transcribed document as well. And that can also be a blog. And that blog will then be indexed by these engines. But also some people like to read it. They maybe don't want to listen to it. Maybe they want to print it. And so it's just a very easy way to take the content and free tools and transfer it into any medium you want.
Last couple tips for those trying to do start at home with the project that they want to get going.
If you want to start home, let's say you want to start your own podcast. Let's say you wanted to start your own business. Let's say you wanted to be more active in something on social media. Let's say that you wanted to create a new thread on Nextdoor Neighbor. So that's a big one, right? I think all of those tips is what do you want to talk about? So I think people have used social media too much to what I would call riff off the top of their head and respond. Most folks that I know read social media not for the back and forth banality of it. They want content. We're looking for content, right? And so if you wanted to get started, the way we did it is we found good tutorials on the internet, and those tutorials were free. And then if we believed in what was so the short answer, Jason, is content now is free. What's not free is the depth of the content. So you get a whole boatload of knowledge, and then you realize, hey, I need more. And so I'm going to sign up for that subscription. That's really, really how it works. But you can get all the way up to what you need for free on the internet.
I think that's a great point on the content, because a lot of times you get out on social media and it's just a lot of armchair quarterbacking, and it's just people telling their random thoughts of the day, and you can listen to it, maybe laugh, and then just move on to the next one. But it's that content, it's those posts that either ask for engagement by truly asking questions or saying, I need your help. Can you share this or give advice on what to do? And then giving content that is something that they can use and research on their own. Like, so how to do a nice video post or how to do this. So that has been the big difference for me, per se. And then at least I'm probably similar to you where I'm a tech guy and I like to figure it out on my own too, but don't let that get in the way and then just focus on good content.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the other thing is context of the content. And so you're right. I like to give people information that they can go and make their own decisions.
Yep.
It's not encapsulated in my opinion. I'm not going to couch this, here's my opinion, and then here go look. It's just here it is. You determine if it's good for you or
Make
not.
it on your own.
Yep.
Yeah. So you do some work on Tech Alpharetta and transit. So when that vote just now going through and it did not pass, we're going to have Fulton County once again most likely come up with transit. So we have regional transit issues and then also transit within our North Fulton area.
Mm-hmm.
What are some areas that you think we could have some opportunity within transit, hopefully just beyond the 400 expansion? What are the needs and what products and services would you like to see around here?
What I would say is I would step back and I would say, what does the city of Alpharetta want to be relative to a transit oriented city? And my what I mean by that is do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be in the middle, or do you want to be a follow-on? And so, to be frank, North Fulton is not a leader in transit. It never has been, and it never will be as long as we don't embrace the idea that we have bad traffic up here, which I think we have. But I think I
think we all have embraced and know that we have
know,
bad
but it's
traffic.
disingenuous to say, "Hey, we pay taxes for MARTA when we vote, consistently voted not to have it up here." So that part of me is what I mean by leadership. So when I say transit that I've worked on is, if we don't want MARTA, what do we have to have? But specifically to Alpharetta, what would I like to see? I would like to see some investment in new technologies that allow our citizens to get around the city, first and foremost. And then I would also like to see, which we've done a great job with the path systems, is more investment in how alternative forms of transit, we can invest more in moving those citizens easily. Not everybody is going to be able to walk.
What do you mean by alternative forms of transit, just so we're on the same page?
I mean, if you want me to give you one thing, I think there should be a bridge over Highway 9 in a couple spots just so we can get people back and forth across 9. 9 is the backbone that's been in Georgia, not between 9 and what's the Parkway and Cobb. Those are the two main ways to go north to North Georgia. They will continue to be that. We're not going to ever, traffic is never going to move to 400 completely. So in order to move our citizens back and forth across the two corridors we have in our downtown, we may want to invest in some infrastructure to move people that it does not involve being in front of cars. Maybe it's above cars or below cars. That's one. Two is are there ways that we can be ahead of the game? So I know we're going to do light timing. We're going to invest in some infrastructure stuff, and I've seen it. Rucker Road improvements over, the 5G down in the North Point corridor is awesome. But since we have those technologies, how can we incent businesses to get on top of them now? And the example I'll give is in Peachtree Corners, they're building a little, the little tram system just to incent businesses to kind of innovate there. So we've got Tech Alpharetta, we've got a lot of the bits and pieces. It's just, where does Alpharetta want to be in terms of, do we want to lead? And if we do want to lead, how much of that investment comes from the business community? How much comes from the city? And then how much comes from the state? And then what do we think is the best way for that to work? The example again is, just because Alpharetta fixes its traffic problem, as we know, doesn't mean that Roswell or Johns Creek is, and we know people flow through our city. But that to me is irrelevant. What is relevant to me is if we show we lead, they will follow. And that's just the way people work, right? I mean, someone has to take the ball and run with it. That's the way things happen. And so if it's not at the state level, my sincere desire is that Alpharetta, with its passionate citizens, its awesome, city council, can figure out a way to effectively and economically provide some transportation solutions that show we're leaders from a tech perspective, that have immediate impact for its citizens, but also help with top line revenue growth, and whether that's inside the city or any businesses around here.
Well, I think now's a good opportunity for us to look at what we would like for transit, because the ATL Transit Board and the statewide, regional level are coming, to ask for a referendum. And it would be good, I think, to have something beyond just let's expand along 400, because there's quite a bit more. You're right. There's more people are going east, west, and north than they are south to Atlanta. And then there's quite a bit of people that stay within the North Fulton area there. So how do we make that work? So solutions would include shuttles, and what else? Transit wide.
So the way I envision transit is Uber started this whole idea of decentralization of services, and so within the taxi industry. But if you just take the Uber model and you expand it out, you have basically what MARTA never provides and will never provide is the end of line service. We know that. But what we also don't have is we don't have what's called concentric circles of transportation. Can I today get into some type of something or some vehicle or passengers something and go to downtown Alpharetta without driving? No. So that's one envision is, are there ways to have smarter vehicles, Uber type vehicles, shuttle buses that are short-term, short-haul buses? I don't even want to call them buses. They're smaller than that. And then the other one is, can you have electric vehicles that would go in between the centers? So you have the Haynesbridge corridor, you have the Avalon corridor, you have the downtown corridor. Why not have ways to move citizens at lunchtime just through those corridors sponsored by businesses and their shuttles? Another one that I thought of is we have 15 hotels now, coming to 24. I know those are not the right numbers, but somewhere around there.
We're at 25 hotels now within our 27 square miles.
And how many are we going to have total? Over 30?
It'll be getting close there.
Right. So every hotel has a white van. Mm-hmm. And why would I want to get into the white van to take me to Avalon to eat? I don't. I call Uber. Well, let's get rid of the white van. You take the money you put into the white van, or maybe you don't have them anymore, and we have a hotel shuttle service that is ours, that's branded as Alpharetta's, that runs in circles, and people would get on it. Inside that shuttle service, we now can educate them on where to go, because we've got a driver that is an older senior citizen that lives here, grew up here, wants to do something good for the community. There's so many different ways to utilize all these different facets of our demographics in a way that sells Alpharetta, but also keeps people here in Alpharetta.
You would have that as a shuttle going from stop to stop, or on demand for
either one? Either one. Shuttles or shuttle. Yeah, it depends. I mean, you could do on demand. You could do business to business. There's a lot of different ways. The big key is someone would say to you, well, what good is a shuttle if I'm still stuck in 5 o'clock traffic? The answer is you're right. So we have to get more people off the roads.
What do you think the appetite is for transit in this community?
What is the definition of transit? And then I will tell you.
Means of transportation other than personal cars and walking.
Low. And I say that because it goes back to mine. If we can't tell the story in a way where it resonates with them on a personal level, I'm saving you time, I'm saving you money. I'll give you an example. Folks are very concerned about the parking on the old side of downtown Alpharetta, even though we have a new deck, because they're used to parking in front of the stores. And not only that, they're concerned now, always have been, because they can't find a space. Even though we have plenty of parking in downtown Alpharetta, it's just not proximal to the businesses. If we tell the story correctly, you change the culture. Well, culture change takes time. It's not a month. It's not 3 months, it's not 6, it's 2 years. So in order to get ahead of transit, what you and council are doing is good, is talking about it. But I think at some point you put a stake in the ground, like the parking decks where we've chosen, like the ways we're trying to do signage, and we say, this is the story. and you stick with the story, because people need that repetition to be remembered. They need their anxiety assuaged in some ways. And then as you slowly migrate them off of this way of living, all of a sudden they're parking in a deck and they don't even know it, and they're okay with it. And so that is, to me, the way that you address the transportation issue. The issue with transportation is we've always linked it to MARTA, and there's a visceral reaction whenever you say the word MARTA, and so we've got to get away from MARTA. So that's the ATL thing, right?
That's the ATL thing. But I've also wondered, it's because MARTA's been so Atlanta focused. And again, how often do you go to Atlanta?
I go for Falcons games. I will tell you, I never take MARTA. But I don't take MARTA because the service is substandard.
But you go frequency wide, just based on events.
Not very frequent.
Right?
It's airport or events. Yeah.
And so when transit solutions are brought to us, it's on how to get to Atlanta.
Agreed.
And we've become our own sub-market, and not really a suburban neighborhood where everybody's going and spending their 9 to 5 in Atlanta. And so that to me is probably the bigger issue, is how do we solve the transit needs for what our community has in front of us.
I would agree with you 100%. I think what we being up here as Roswell, Alpharetta, Johns Creek, sometimes peek down to Sandy Springs and try to say we're like Sandy Springs, and we're not.
Yeah.
We're not near the size. We don't have the dollars. We don't even have the industries that are in Sandy Springs, nor do we want them. But the point is that's kind of sometimes, well, Sandy Springs has got a station, they've got MARTA, and they've attracted Mercedes, and they've attracted these things. Well, that's fine and good, but Alpharetta's a bucolic, Milton, horse, agra, farm. Sandy Springs has been like that for many, many years. And so I always caution people, let's not compare ourselves to these entities that we may not even want to be like.
Well, I think we do, it would be nice to have transit around. It'd be nice to discuss how would you solve transit issues within Highway 9, just as much as you're talking about fixing transit issues along 400. I think a big miss was not discussing how Gwinnett would connect to North Fulton, because everybody just wants to go from Gwinnett to Atlanta under that mindset. Everybody would want to go from North Fulton to Atlanta. But we should have east and west connectivity.
Yeah,
I think that's probably was the big miss.
Yeah, that's what I agree with you. Is that when I give the example of Sandy Springs, I give the example of is that let's not use the same paradigm because it's different. The miss in Gwinnett of the vote, right, is it didn't even connect north to south in Gwinnett, right?
Correct.
So when the split of the voters, the northern voters did not see any benefit because it wasn't going there. And so you're exactly right, is if you're going to propose transit-oriented solutions, you've got to have them to where they're solving the biggest pieces of pain. But let's be realistic. You also have them where you have to have the votes to win. That's the other piece that I thought was a huge miss, is why are we proposing something where the voters, you got to have the voters. If this is a referendum, you've got to have the voters.
So it looks like we're going to move you from planning commissioner to ATL transit board member.
No, I'm good right where I am. I appreciate it.
Well, I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch, so I think we're going to have to end it here a little bit, but I'd love to have you come back and maybe give some more advice on things that you see coming up technology-wise. We haven't even gotten into the voice that you always love talking about, voice search and
sure
and that. But it's been great having you and hearing more about what you've been doing around Alpharetta.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Thank you for listening to North Fulton Serves. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for a new episode anywhere you listen to podcasts. Be sure to rate the show and look for us on YouTube. You can also follow me on jasonbinder.com and @jasonbinder for both Twitter and Facebook. Thanks for listening.